Andy Elliot was not unlike most of us. He was an ordinary man with extraordinary dreams, dreams he kept locked away for years. Why? Because self-doubt had convinced him they were unreachable. Every day, he woke up with a gnawing feeling in the pit of his stomach. It wasn't failure he feared, it was the belief that he wasn't good enough to even try. He'd stare at his reflection in the mirror, but all he saw was a man who was stuck. Stuck in the same routine, stuck in the same mindset, trapped in a cycle of fear, uncertainty, and hesitation. For Andy, self-doubt wasn't just an occasional visitor, it was his constant companion. It whispered in his ear whenever he wanted to take a chance, a risk, or pursue something new. It told him he would fail. It told him others were better, smarter, more deserving of success. And Andy believed it. Over time, that voice grew louder. He stopped speaking up in meetings, avoided eye contact at networking events, and let countless opportunities slip by. Self-doubt had wrapped itself around him like a heavy cloak, weighing him down, keeping him small. Andy knew he wasn't alone. Self-doubt affects millions of people. Some studies say as much as 85% of the population struggles with it. But knowing that didn't help him. He saw others around him take chances, embrace risks, fail, and then get back up. But he couldn't do it. Not yet. Every time he thought about making a change, fear held him back. Fear of being seen as inadequate, fear of confirming the very doubts that had plagued him for years. And so, he stayed quiet. He stayed safe. But inside, he was restless. Then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't a grand epiphany, nor was it a sudden burst of confidence. It was a rejection letter from a job Andy never even applied for. That piece of paper, sitting on his desk, was a reminder of all the opportunities he had let pass him by. Not because he wasn't capable, but because he had convinced himself he wasn't. He looked at the letter and realized he had been living his entire life in fear of rejection, failure, and judgment. Fears that had become his reality, not because they were true, but because he had never dared to challenge them. That night, Andy made a decision. He was tired of living in the shadows of his own self-doubt. He was tired of being a bystander in his own life. He realized that the only way to break free from this invisible prison was to confront his fears head-on, to stop listening to the voice that told him he wasn't good enough, and to start rewriting the story he had been telling himself for so long. The first steps were small, almost imperceptible. Andy began reading books on personal growth, devouring every piece of wisdom he could find about overcoming doubt, building confidence, and cultivating a positive mindset. He listened to podcasts, watched motivational talks, and surrounded himself with stories of people who had conquered their insecurities. Slowly but surely, he began to shift his thinking. He realized that self-doubt is not a truth, it's a story, one that we have the power to rewrite. As he absorbed this new knowledge, Andy began taking action. At work, he started speaking up in meetings, even when his heart raced and his palms sweated. He challenged himself to step outside his comfort zone, striking up conversations with people he would have once been too intimidated to approach. He set small, achievable goals for himself, each one designed to push him further away from his comfort zone and closer to the man he wanted to be. But the journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks. There were days when the voice of doubt came roaring back, louder than ever. Andy stumbled. He failed. He made mistakes that once would have confirmed all his insecurities. But now, instead of retreating into himself, he faced those failures head-on. He learned to separate his worth from his outcomes, to see failure not as a reflection of his inadequacy, but as a necessary part of growth. And then, came the day that would test everything Andy had worked for. He was invited to give a speech at a company event, a terrifying prospect for someone who had once been afraid to even raise his hand in a meeting. Every instinct told him to decline, to avoid the spotlight, to hide. But Andy had come too far to turn back now. He accepted the challenge. On the day of the event, Andy's heart pounded as he stepped onto the stage. The room was full of people, his colleagues, his peers, even his superiors, all watching him. The old doubts crept in, whispering that he would mess up, that he would embarrass himself. But Andy had learned something important on his journey. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward in spite of it. As he began to speak, the words flowed more easily than he expected. He spoke about his journey, about the power of self-doubt, and about the importance of believing in yourself, even when it feels impossible. And as he spoke, something remarkable happened. Andy started to believe his own words. By the time he finished, the applause in the room was loud, but the real victory was the quiet confidence that had taken root inside him. That moment on stage marked a turning point. Andy wasn't cured of his self-doubt, no one ever truly is. But he had learned to manage it, to move through it, to live his life in spite of it. The man who had once been too afraid to take a chance was now embracing challenges, taking risks, and growing with each step he took. He went on to achieve things he once thought were impossible. He started his own business, built stronger relationships, and pursued goals he had long buried under the weight of his insecurities. Andy's journey is a reminder that self-doubt doesn't define us. It's a voice, yes, but it's not the voice. We all have the power to change the stories we tell ourselves, to step into the person we are capable of becoming. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without setbacks. But it does happen when we choose, again and again, to believe in our own potential. So, what's holding you back? What's the story you've been telling yourself? Andy's story isn't just his, it's the story of anyone who has ever let doubt stand in the way of their dreams. But as Andy proved, that story can be rewritten. Your breakthrough might be just one decision away. Believe in yourself. The rest will follow.